Anybody need a handout? I'm gonna go get a handout. Okay, and I'm gonna make my way over here. We all know why we're here. And without further ado, I will introduce our speaker this evening, Deborah Diamond. Take it away.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm very pleased to see this crowd. I delivered the same workshop, was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago?
3 years ago.
3 years ago, it was the pandemic, and I think we had 6 people sitting at a distance with masks. Okay, but I'll tell you something else that's happened with the pandemic is I would say it's quite likely that I'm wearing the same outfit that I had on last year. Look at, have you noticed your laundry? There's no laundry anymore because you're not getting dressed up to go anywhere. But for anyone here who's young enough, and I don't see anyone in the crowd, oh wait, maybe one person in the crowd young enough. Y'all know who Taylor Swift is? Okay, so in her final two concerts in Vancouver, BC, last month, which I know about endlessly because of my niece, she wore the same costumes on the first concert and the second concert, and there was all this wondering why was she doing that. Well, she's going to be doing a film and they want to be able to cut in the same outfit. So that's why I wore the same outfit tonight, is so when they post it to the website, they can cut in, if there's any part of it that clips out. Okay. The first thing I want you to do is hide the page with the numbers on it, because you're going to freak out if you see the numbers, okay? And I'm going to let you know there's only one number you need to take away with you tonight. There's a computation as to how to get to that number. If you're interested in the numbers, you can follow it. But all you really need to know is, bottom line, if you are a caregiver, you are an employee, and I'm going to talk you through that. So my name is Deborah Diamond. I've lived on the island now almost 10 years, and I used to work for the Internal Revenue Service for 33 years. Yeah, and I retired and moved here because there were too many 9-year-old boys with basketballs in the neighborhood I lived in on Queen Anne. My partner and I now live on 5 acres of forest in the Burton area. I have probably met a number of you virtually. If you filed for unemployment in 2020 during the pandemic, or 2021, I probably know who you are, and I probably even know your weight, because if you'll remember, you had to send me a picture of your driver's license so that I could file unemployment for you. At a certain point, I had filed unemployment for 300 Vashonites. And the Employment Security Department came out with an alert saying, fraud alert, people are filing fraudulent returns, we're going to crack down on it, everything. I immediately called the fraud department and said, I know I filed 300 unemployment applications from the same IP address, but I'm helping people. It's really okay. So they never really caught up with me. And others of you may have met through at the Vashon Lutheran Church. We used to do it at the library, but at the Vashon Lutheran Church for the past several years, we prepare free tax returns for people. You do not have to be old, although many of you, including myself, for many years, qualify for that service. But we provide the service to anyone who needs the assistance through AARP. And I will give you the email address for setting up an appointment if you're interested in doing that. How many of you were here in 2022 when I did this last presentation? Anyone? Okay, good. Then I can use the same pattern that I used then. Okay. What I've noticed is, since I have delivered, you need to mute yourself, whoever is talking from remotely. And now I've lost my train of thought. Okay, we are going to talk about the business of caregiving, okay? What we have noticed at the AARP site is, after I gave this seminar, we got a whole another group of people coming in who were caregivers. The first year they came in, they were panicky because they had not set aside taxes. The second year that we saw them, they were like, I set aside my taxes, I had withholding, I'm an employee, here's my W-2. They were very happy, okay? So you don't need to reveal to me which situation you're in right now. We will be able to help you, and if you're someone who's been under the radar for a number of years and need to get into the system, we can assist you in doing that and setting up an installment agreement with the IRS and so forth. Anyway, we'll get to all that. So as caregivers, I should ask, how many of you are caregivers, if you'll raise your hand? Okay, givers. And how many of you are anticipating being care receivers or looking for receivers, okay? Is there any other part of the, are you either a caregiver or a care receiver? Is there any other audience I'm speaking to here? No? Okay, got it. All right, so as caregivers and as people who are receiving care, I'm going to speak to caregivers at this point. As caregivers, you know how important it is to have the resources to pay for the care when you need it. And as care receivers, you know how taxing, if you'll excuse the expression, that can be, all right? What I want to tell you is that you are cheating yourself and you are being exploited if you take cash under the table, all right? As an in-home caregiver, you are a household employee in terms of the IRS, and you are worthy of proper treatment. You are a household employee because the person who is employing you is controlling your hours, your tasks, they're providing the supplies, etc. A self-employed person, and many caregivers have been put in a position or thought that was the only way to go, put themselves out there as self-employed caregivers. That's a very, very rare circumstance I want to describe to you. I'll give you an analogy that I think you can all relate to here. A self-employed person is somebody who offers service to the general public, has their own tools, controls how the work is done, okay? So I want you to think about if you're lucky enough to be able to afford someone to clean your house, okay? A house cleaner with their own business has a number of clients, okay? They have their own sponges and mops. They even bring their own special vacuum. They control how to clean the bathroom, okay? If you have a maid, you're the one that's providing the tools. You're telling the person the tasks they need to perform, the hours they need to be there, what product you want them to use, etc. Okay? A maid is a household employee. A cleaner who comes every 3-4 weeks or whatever to your house and brings their own tools is self-employed. I need to ask whoever's, there is somebody who needs to mute their, somebody who's remotely there who needs to mute. I hate to call out a name here. Thank you, person. I just saw you put yourself on mute. Should I call out the name? No, I don't think I will. All right. Does anybody have any question about that analogy there, okay? It's a different situation, okay? And a caregiver,
Can you just repeat what you said while the person who wasn't?
Yeah, I can do that again. I'm going to
we missed all that.
All right. So a self-employed person brings their own tools. They control how the work is done. They offer their services to the general public, all right? So a house cleaner, for example, with their own business would bring their own sponges and mops and vacuum, okay? They're not using yours, they're bringing their own tools. They control how to clean, okay? So they decide we're gonna start with the top of the house and dust down, or as the cleaners who I use, for some reason they start in the kitchen and they end up in the bathroom upstairs. I don't know, but they're self-employed and they get to decide how they're gonna do that. Now, I've told them I don't like fragrance. I can tell them that, but they're still in control of how they clean. You know, if they wanna use a squeegee that's on a stick versus if they wanna use, I've had window cleaners who come in and they use newspaper to dry, the old school, the old world kind of clean your windows. They'll use newspaper. A self-employed person decides that, okay? But if you have like a maid, somebody who's there on a consistent basis, doing a consistent job, where you've laid out what you're the one who says, I'm gonna bathe her in the morning, so you don't need to bathe her, but I need you to feed her lunch and dinner, and it needs to be at this time, and I don't want you to use products with too much salt in them, things like that. That person is a household employee, okay? So I want you to repeat after me, those of you who are caregivers. As a caregiver, I am a household employee, I am worthy. Okay? I am a household employee, I am worthy. Okay. There are some very negative consequences of first of all, not reporting in the first place. If you're receiving cash under the table, it's tax evasion, okay? If you are the employer or the person the caregiving, the care recipient, and you are paying someone cash under the table, and if you're writing it off as a business, don't even go there, all right? Should not. If you're trying to write it off as a medical expense, okay? If you're doing cash, if you're doing under the table, forget it, okay? In order to receive the benefits, you have to take the responsibilities as well. So, for example, you as a caregiver is going to have a certain number of quarters of paid employment at a certain level in order to get Social Security when you in fact are older. And I'm sure you've seen it gets very expensive when you're older and need care, all right? Social Security may not be an income you can live on, but it's most definitely an income that you can't live without, okay? So you're gonna need to have 40 quarters. Now, some of you have worked in public school systems, you've been firefighters, police officers, etc. You've paid into systems that are not Social Security. You're gonna need to have 40 quarters of credits in order to get Social Security. And you may say, oh, well, that Social Security is only gonna be $600 a month. It's a very minimal level because I never worked, very much or whatever. You're gonna want Medicare, all right? Forget Social Security. The thing that is of a huge benefit to you is Medicare. And you will not get Medicare coverage unless you've got those 40 quarters. So you cannot afford to be giving away your eventual care that you're going to need and sustenance that you're going to need to allow somebody to be paying you under the table or off the books or whatever, all right? And besides that, it's unprofessional, okay? You have skills and they are worthy of respect, and you need to present yourself as and be treated as a professional caregiver. So there are some positive consequences of doing it right. I won't tell you how many people, when the pandemic hit and they realized that there was unemployment benefits that were available to people who had a history of income where they had been paying in either as an employee or a self-employed person, who were like, what am I gonna do? I've been getting cash under the table for the last 10 years. I'm not in the system. I didn't report it, whatever. Well, that was part of what myself and some colleagues did, is we helped people file tax returns for 2019, 2020, 2021, so that they could get unemployment, so that they could get the earned income tax credit, okay? I don't know if any of you have minor children, but again, you might be talking to some of your caregiving, some of you, there's some young people here, I'm sorry, it took me a minute to see people. There's a very helpful tax benefit for people who work in lower wage jobs. If you are single, you've got to be over 25 and you got to be under 65, and there's this particular credit that you can get. If you have children, it goes up based on the number of children that you have. There is also, as of last year, something called in Washington called the Washington Working Families Credit that piggybacks on the earned income credit and gives you another boost. I believe it goes up to $2,000 depending on the size of your family and the size of your income and so forth. So in order to and these are refundable credits. You don't, for those of you who know a little bit about taxes, there are some credits where you have to have tax to take the credit. You have to only be able to offset it to the extent of the tax. Earned income tax credit is actually a very progressive, I hate to say the word, especially on January 6th, a very progressive benefit, okay, that is supposed to balance the effect of the amount that's held out of people's wages for Social Security on lower income people, okay? So it's proportionally, if you think about it, the amount of taxes that are being held out proportionate to someone on a low income is so much more than it is on someone higher income. So anyway, the earned income tax credit helps with that. But none of these benefits are available to you unless you are, in fact, properly reporting. The other positive consequences would be things like a verifiable income for a credit card. You apply for a credit card. Oh, well, I've been receiving cash all these years. All right, we're going to give you a $10,000 limit on your credit card. No, they're not, okay? You don't have verifiable income. If you suddenly need a personal loan, if you are trying to get a mortgage, think of it that way. If you have an opportunity at some point to move into a different kind of employment, or if you're going to parlay your skills from this employment into a different environment, you're going to want to have a record, illegal employment on your resume. And again, resumes and jobs lead to the availability of credit for a mortgage, for credit cards, for loans, etc. If you want to be able to avail yourself of the Obamacare health subsidies. Now, I know you can get AppleCare without any kind of income, but if you're in a situation beyond AppleCare, but without not being able to afford healthcare premiums in full, you're going to be in the Obamacare band of people, and you're going to need to have the income to get the subsidy for the premium. Okay, so I have given you a list that you can hand to an employer, but let me just talk it through with you. But what I'm saying is you don't have to take notes or memorize it or anything like that. But basically, you'll see on the website, Tori has set up, here's how you prepare a job description. The job description would be like, you're going to be here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 12. You're going to do this, this, and this. You're going to take so-and-so to the grocery store. You're going to do one load of sheets and change the sheets, etc. Okay? When you establish that employment relationship, you're going to need to give your employer an I-9 to establish you can legally work in the United States. So that would involve showing your employer a Social Security card or a green card that shows that you're eligible for employment. Now, this is where we start getting into those of you who want to receive care and are going to be employers. I want to give you a little caveat right up front. You don't need to do it. When you hear what I tell you what you're going to need to do, it's a lot. And it's not easy, and you've got other stuff going on. There are third-party services that will do this for you. All you need to do at the end of, whether it's a week or every 2 weeks, is to say, Mary worked 13 and a half hours, like magic, it happens, and they charge you. I don't know if anybody's used a third-party service, but when I looked at the couple that are on the website that's for caregivers, it looked like it was $25 a month for them to prepare the W-2, for them to do the payroll, do all the withholding, send it into the state, do all the figuring, give you what you needed for your income tax, etc. So as I'm talking, when you start glazing over, think $20 a month. That's why I worked all my life, is so that I would have savings to pay for things like this, okay? And that's something you're probably going to want to pay for. So you got to have an I-9 to set them up. If you are going to do it in either case, even if the payroll service, they can do it for you, but you need what's called an EIN to set yourself up as an employer. It's like a Social Security number, but it relates to the business itself. Okay, so and that's you as the employer of a household employee. If your caregiver wants to have withholding, so they don't owe taxes at the end of the year, you're gonna have to have a W-4. You probably remember when you were an employee, you filled out a W-4 and told them how many dependents you had, and they figured out what your taxes should be. They need to issue you a W-2 by January 31st each year, and they need to file a Schedule H with their tax return. Now, this is the care receiver, the person whoever's responsible for paying you, okay? So again, how many people are going with third party all together? Okay, you'll wait and see. I'll walk you through some numbers. All right, now again, go ahead.
Could you just repeat that last one? You said a W-2 by January 31st, and what was the one you said?
A Schedule H gets filed with your individual tax return. The H stands for household employee. And the Schedule H is going to show what you paid out and what you withheld and your portion of the Social Security and so forth. Now, yep.
One more question. So is this list that you're giving us also on the website?
And it's on the handout that says household payroll and blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
It's got Schedule H on there as well. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you some things here, and I'm going to use numbers, but you don't have to memorize, you don't have to know the number, you don't have to memorize the number, just get an idea, okay, that it adds to the cost for the care receiver to have you as an employee, and we're going to talk in a minute about therefore you adjust your rate. Tori, did you have a question?
I just wanted to mention that the form that she's going over, those are all hyperlinks.
Yeah.
And when I wanted to get through this evening and make sure that we were going to use these, and these will be posted to the Care Network website. So you'll be able to go there and just click on the hyperlink from there instead of having to type it all in.
And if you don't know what hyperlink is, you'll probably already need a caregiver to work on your computer. Go ahead.
So this sheet is just for an employer, not
Correct.
the employee.
We're going to do a role play in a minute, and we're going to show you when you hand that to the person, and then they faint, and then you use your skills to assist them in recovering from that. Okay. So, the employer, and as I'm saying employer, I'm referring to the people who are paying you, the caregiver. The employer has to hold out half of the Social Security. So that's 6.2% plus an amount that's held out for Medicare, which is 1.45%. So together, that is 7.65%. All right. Again, don't listen to the numbers. And the employer pays the other half. Okay. So half comes out of the employee's wages, half is paid by the employer. Now, this is something you're probably accustomed to if you also pick up hours at a restaurant or Thriftway or wherever else you're going, okay? Now, if you're self-employed, if you have been under the illusion that you were self-employed, or if you have some other self-employment activity, you're paying both halves yourself. You're paying 15.3%, okay? As an employee, half comes out of your own wages, half by the employer. And I'll show you how that all comes down in the end. The employer is also paying something that is that's unemployment tax, and it is what funds unemployment when you're between jobs or when there's a pandemic or whatever. That amount, and I won't go into details, but it's basically about 6% split between the state and the feds, and it only kicks in if you are earning about $1,000 from that person within a quarter, which is 3 months. I think most of your jobs are longer term than that, than earning $1,000 in a 3-month period. But again, a payroll service will figure this out for you, or you can follow the rules and follow it down and figure it out yourself. So if some of you are maybe doing respite care as opposed to ongoing care, you might have a situation where you're working, one weekend while somebody goes and visits whomever is not there taking care of their parents, okay? And you might only have, less than $1,000 in that period and your employer, but you're not gonna see it, okay? It's the employer's responsibility entirely to pay the unemployment tax. All right, so again, I'm not going to get you into further detail about those particular numbers. Now, some of you are receiving what the IRS calls non-cash wages. Okay, so lodging and meals. If, for example, you are there's a room in the house where you stay overnight, and you are provided dinner, or there's, if you're lucky, a pizza in the freezer or something like that. If the lodging and meals are provided at the person's home for their convenience and as a condition of employment, that's not taxable, okay? So it's got to be a condition of employment, and that would not be taxable if that's being provided. Otherwise, if they, for example, you are living in someone's house and they are providing you free rent, it would be part of the fair market value of that lodging should technically be included as part of your wages. So I know some of you have different kinds of arrangements with people you care for that could lead to you're having income from basically getting free rent. And I'm assuming if you're getting free rent, you're also getting less in terms of payments. So it doesn't really, dollars are what they call fungible. Do you guys know what that means? A dollar is a dollar. It doesn't matter where it comes from. It doesn't matter if it's barter or rent or paid out to you in cash or given to you in gold bullion. It's a dollar and it's taxable. Okay, now you should be reimbursed for mileage for running errands, okay? For, going to the store to pick up supplies or taking the person to pick up their own mail or to a doctor appointment or whatever. If you account to your employer for the mileage, it's not included in your income. So accounting could just be, make sure that as you're about to get paid that you're like, okay, I did 14 miles today and $8 parking and a ferry ride. If you account to the employer and they reimburse those amounts, you're good. Now, if the employer gives you, for example, $200 a month for mileage, and it's like, I don't want to hear about it. You're going to have to keep track of that. Be sure to tell them what the amount is, what you spent. Okay, I did, $148. You got to report the rest of it that you didn't expend as part of your income. Okay, some of you may remember from long ago that employee business expenses used to be deductible. Since 2018, they are no longer deductible. Everything got simplified with a great big standard deduction instead of people itemizing their expenses. So you do not want to have any unreimbursed mileage expense because you're not going to be able to write it off in any way. An employer could say to you, look, I'd rather pay you $3 more an hour and you deal with that. Add it up in your head and make sure you're not being exploited. Sounds like a good deal. All right, now it may be awkward at first to approach your caregiver, the person who needs the caregiving, but if all the caregivers on Vashon use the same approach and basically insist on being treated respectfully as employees, I think it'll get easier and easier and easier, okay? And I think that's already been happening, if I'm not mistaken. People who have come to us then for taxes are like, yeah, I had this person who was offering me X number of hours but they, wanted me to be self-employed, and they said, nope, I'm a professional, I'm a household employee, and you see if you can find, I think you'll find that other people on Vashon are going to say the same thing. You need to support each other in this community in terms of doing it right. Let's do a role play. Carol and Tori, if you'd come up here and show us how not uncomfortable it can be.
Where are you going, Tori?
She's going in front of the camera, Carol.
Do I look okay? No, which one? Which one am I?
You are I'm paying you, or not.
Oh, well, I look forward to working with you to provide care for your mother.
I am so happy to meet you.
Project your voice out if you will.
Come here.
I'm really delighted that you're here, and I desperately need help. My mother is, it's just more than we can handle, and I need for you, or I need a caregiver to be with us and to help us. And
Whoever you are, hold on, somebody remotely, you need to mute yourself. Mute, please. Mute, please. I'm gonna call out your name. 10, 9, 8.
I can mute them.
You can mute them.
You're not in the camera,
Okay.
so you gotta get over there.
Okay, got it.
Muted.
Sorry, would you go back and say, all right, so she's saying she's looking forward to providing care for her mother. Go ahead, Carol. Say it again, please. They
I
didn't hear.
am really glad you're here, because I desperately need help. My mother is, she is just declining rapidly, and we can't manage her, and we desperately need a caregiver to come in and help us.
I'm so glad that you phoned me. I am glad to sit down with you and go over how you can hire me to be your employee.
Okay, let's talk about that.
I happen to have a list with me of forms that you're going to need to fill out.
Oh, how simple. You don't understand. You really don't get then my situation. I mean, I am caring for her 24/7, and I have a little one at home, and I can't possibly, I wouldn't have any clue how to do this.
Well, fortunately for you, all of this is available on the Vashon Care Network website.
I don't have a computer.
I'm sorry,
My girls.
but I'm a professional caregiver and I really need to do this the legal way. I don't want either of us to get in trouble for tax evasion. Do you? You don't need one more problem on top of everything else that you've got going on. The Internal Revenue Service considers caregivers to be household employees, which makes you an employer.
I think maybe there are other ways. Maybe I can find a different caregiver who doesn't require all of this back and forth, this legal stuff. I mean, I know there are many caregivers on the island who are doing this. I mean, I can pay you in cash, and it would make it so much easier for both of us, I think.
Well, I think that I appreciate what you're going through, and I'm really sorry that there's as much as, is required to get this set up. I would be glad to help you with my own computer. I could bring a computer over and we could go through this together. The problem is that there are challenges that I face when I collect cash from you that are kind of long-term problems, and I'm not able to do that. I need to make sure that I'm getting enough quarters to qualify for Social Security and Medicare when I get older, because we know what happens. We need care, right?
Yes.
Also, being an employee gives me verifiable income and makes me eligible for things like unemployment. Remember the pandemic and no one could work? If I was receiving cash under the table, I wouldn't be eligible for unemployment. So it's really important for me to take care of this and become an employee. And I'm glad to help you. And I know it's frustrating, believe me, because you're concentrating on caring for your mother. But I think that you'll find, if you talk to a lot of the other caregivers on the island, that this is the way that everybody is starting to go. If you can find someone who's willing to work for cash under the table, maybe that's what you need to do. But I'm just not in a position to be able to do that.
No.
Don't say that.
Don't offer that. Don't set anybody else up for that. You want to set your people up for success.
Okay.
Nobody does that. Where did you hear that?
I heard it from people on the island. I mean, this island, you just go to Thriftway and you find out who is and who isn't. But I mean,
You would be like a union boss, right? You're the Caregivers Network, right? You'd be like a union boss saying, "Oh, well, you don't have to use union workers. Just make up your own bug and put it on the when you print stuff."
I was trying to make her feel guilty.
Don't hire. Well, okay.
you are not doing well. I have no desire to be an employer. I mean, I don't get this business. I didn't know that just because I'm having somebody come to my home and take care of my mother, that now I'm an employer?
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the law.
It's
Your caregiver's a lawyer too.
And the reason that I know it's the law is I've actually gone to each of these websites, and these are all of the forms that are required.
Overwhelming, yeah.
I know, but I would be glad to help you with this. I have a computer. These are all hyperlinks. You know what that is?
No.
I'm gonna show you. And
Not that I'm interested in knowing
well,
about
I
that.
oh, the third party thing. But I
Third party.
also know that there are services available
Yeah.
that are relatively inexpensive that you could contact who could help you set all of this up. Would you like information about that?
It depends on how much it costs. My expenses are just, I'm really struggling.
I feel so bad for you. I'm not quite sure.
Well,
What to
and
do now.
the answer you would say is, I mean, you should look in advance, but my understanding is it's about $25 a month, and then you don't have to deal with this. All you have to do is call in my hours at the end of the week, you know?
I need $25 a month. Let's see, that's $200, $300 a year.
Yeah.
I'm tight, but
Yeah,
yeah, I'll have to look into that, I guess, because we desperately need the help.
And I would be glad to help you find that information.
Okay. I think maybe we might strike a deal. Maybe I can pay part of it under the table.
That's not okay.
That's not
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I wrote a script, they didn't follow it. They are ignoring the teleprompter. Okay. So we'll go to questions in just a second. I want you to pull out the sheet with numbers all over it. And don't glaze over because we're not going to go over the numbers. I just want to tell you what's here so that if you do want to look into it or just appreciate the bottom line. Okay, the very first column is somebody who is operating as a self-employed person, okay? They get what's called a 1099 NEC at the end of the year. And if you'll just look across the top there, if that person is self-employed and charging $35 an hour, bottom line, go all the way to the bottom where it says net take-home pay, they're basically, with $35 a year, 20 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, they're basically getting $26,000 net take-home pay, okay? So, person who is charging $35 as an employee, if you look to the bottom, that person, if you look under net, which is like three up from the bottom, they're actually taking home more, $28,000, okay? And the reason they're taking home more is they're only paying half their Social Security, okay? All right, cool. And so the bottom line you see there is they're actually taking home $1,792 more, all right? But if you look in the next column, this is where the care receiver is having to pay out $3,474 more by holding out their half of the Social Security and paying into federal unemployment, okay? So, what you can do if you are currently operating as self-employed and needing $35 an hour in order to make things work, in order to come out, you'll still come out the same if you are an employee earning $32 an hour, okay? So look at the column, you've got two to the second over from the right. If you charge $32 an hour, you're at a point where you're just about even, okay? You've got $439 less than you had, but you've got quarters that are building, you've got eligibility for Obamacare, you've got EITC, etc. And it's not that big a bite to the employer as well. They're paying only $200 more. So you can use these numbers to kind of, if you're a self-employed person now and are going to get right with the law, you could negotiate, let's do $32 and I'm going to be an employee because that's what I really need to be. Okay. I am willing to take care. Oh, one more thing. We are going to be opening up our season for filling out tax returns for people for free at the Vashon Lutheran Church on Thursdays from 10 to 2. You can make an appointment by emailing. You'll see it in the Beachcomber, but you email Vashon, AARP, @gmail.com. and a very helpful person who happens to be my partner and also worked for the IRS for 30 years. We'll be setting up, she'll be emailing you an appointment and what you need to bring and set it up and all. And we'll be operating from February 6th until April 10th on Thursdays. This will all be in the Beachcomber. But those of you who have simple tax returns, that you're gonna get your W-2 by January 31st, and you might have some bank interest from one of the credit unions, you can set up an appointment February 6th. Those of you who might have investment income, if you might have sold some stocks, if you've gotten, $5 royalties from an oil well in North Dakota, which you're very glad you left behind, right? That might be a little more, you might have to wait until the end of February to get your forms, etc. But you'll know when you're ready, and we can assist. We will have 3 or 4, we'll have at least 3, maybe 4, almost 5 appointments available at each particular time. It kind of depends. We have to go through, we have a quality review of each return. So if you've got a fairly simple situation and you get there at a good hour, you might get in there at 10 o'clock and get out of there at 11:15, okay? Just bring something to read, okay? And we reserve the right to require masks if all hell breaks loose again, okay? At this point, we're just gonna, keep people across the table. I will take questions. What do you have?
Did you say it was vashon@aarp.com?
No, at gmail.com. It's an email address.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you just email. Yes.
I'd like to get back a little bit to the job description, and I'm wondering if there's a distinction between when one becomes an employee and when is it like an occasional worker. For example, if you might be just employing someone every 2 months for a few hours. I mean, what is the limit? At what point are you an employee?
Well, so for federal unemployment tax purposes, they say it's $1,000 in a quarter. So that's 3 months.
Uh-huh.
So they're not required to hold out federal unemployment, and they are not required to hold out Social Security or Medicare.
If it's less than that.
But you are required to report it still. So you need to keep track of income that's not going to be coming to you in the form of a W-2. Yeah.
You, the worker.
You, the worker, the
You,
care,
the
yeah,
worker,
sorry.
you, the caregiver.
Right, right,
Because you're still required to pay
correct.
income tax on it.
Income tax on it, right.
So
Correct.
you pay taxes quarterly?
No, don't go there.
No.
That's a whole different subject. You pay taxes if you're not having withholding, if you're self-employed, if you're out there doing construction projects, you're filing quarterly estimates. But okay, if you have investment income, that's a tax subject and a whole different thing. The quarterly thing is only in terms of you don't have to do you don't have to do the employer thing if it's less than $1,000 a quarter. What I would advise people to do, so person in the maroon sweater, whoever you are, you don't know when you go in there. They might say, oh, I'm only gonna have you a couple hours here. And then all of a sudden, somebody has an illness or a fall and they need you more, and all of a sudden you're over 2,400 and you don't have any withholding of Social Security or anything. So build it into your contract, okay? Start with what Tori's got on the website, but build it in. If this goes over 2,400 in a 3-month period, then blah, blah, blah.
And I'm wondering if on the website, Tori, is there a sample contract or a sample job description?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
So you outline the case pretty well against just going straight under the table, but I'm still not 100% convinced that that it's an advantage to become an employee of a family. Can you tell, other than the idea that you would that the care provider would get a little bonus in terms of Social Security, or maybe more than a little bonus?
So are you
Is there any other advantage in being an employee?
Employee or employer are you asking? You seem to be, I got mixed.
For a care provider.
Yeah, okay, you're a care provider?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me. Ask your question.
What's the advantage?
The advantage? Okay.
Yeah, versus being an independent contractor.
Okay, first of all, you're not doing the right thing. So if you get audited, you will, okay?
No, that's not what I'm talking about. Like, is it possible to, like, be an independent contractor and be a care provider?
No. Now, if you are a physical therapist and you visit this client and this client and this client, okay, and you have an in-home appointment, you're self-employed. But if you are employed by the homeowner to provide care in the home, okay, and you are not, you're not one of these specialized rehab, like I say, a physical therapist coming in or a doctor coming in or whatever. If you are providing caregiving services, you are a household employee. So it's not about advantage or disadvantage, except to the extent, okay.
Okay, in the beginning of the presentation, you made the analogy.
House cleaners, yep.
Compared a maid versus a cleaning person.
Correct.
So there is no analogous role as HCA for.
Well, only like what I said, if it's a special, a physical therapist is not a caregiver, right? Somebody who comes in and does occupational therapy, whatever, those are other specialties. But caregiving is by definition in the law, and a household, yeah. There you have it. Liz?
Is it typical that if you had a CPA who helped with your taxes and things like that, might they be able to help set up a payroll situation?
Yeah, they'd be glad to for a price. You don't need a CPA to set this up.
Have you tried that?
Well, yeah, I know people that thousands of dollars.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
I don't,
hourly rates, the CPA's hourly rates are extraordinary.
I see.
You know,
Yeah.
That's not the way to go. It would
That's-
be to go through the
payroll service. No, you may,
Yeah, care.com is a good one.
care.com.
yeah. Which one do you use?
I've been paid by care.com.
That's one of the ones that's on the website here. And I use, I'm still, although I am 74 years old, I am still consulting. And I use a payroll service for my subcontractors, and it's the easiest thing in the world. And I'm sure they're set up
so many of it.
exactly the same. And you just plunk in a number and it's done for you. They
And
do,
it's all online.
and it's all online. You could probably get a service where you could call it in, but you don't need to, you're entering a phase of your life where you're providing caregiving, which is something that you don't, for a family member or somebody who's employing you. The family that's receiving the care, the person who's in charge of employing you, they don't need to mess with this. It's way more than they need to do. They need to focus on the emotional stuff, the supportive stuff, etc. Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
Where does a person who's functioning as a personal assistant fit? So they come in and out, helping people with bookkeeping, with whatever, organizing, with running errands. So they're regularly coming so many hours.
Mm-hmm.
They're not giving care.
Okay, well, you kind of were going over into care though about running errands.
Okay, running errands.
Yeah.
So, but what about somebody who's,
No, if somebody has a business where they come in and, comes in and helps you organize your records, helps you organize your photographs, helps you write your will, helps you, whatever. You have some other examples of things that helping with?
just things that,
Cleaning the garage.
Yeah, that's cleaning the garage. It's different. But if you're caregiving, the IRS defines that. That's one of the categories of employees.
What's on the list for caregiving? Can you just say?
Well, it would be what are the daily activities that people need assistance with? Isn't there an acronym for it? The bathing, toileting, feeding, et cetera, et cetera. Those.
Also a personal assistant, and
If they're
it's the
a
same
personal
thing.
care assistant, but not. When you said personal assistant, I thought you were like, okay, where am I supposed to go to dinner, and, you know, when am I having, my interview with so-and-so? You weren't talking about that, you were talking about, not a celebrity assistant, you're talking about a personal care
No,
assistant.
somebody who comes and
Yeah.
helps you
Did you have
do
an
things
RN or
as you get.
MAC? Is that-
Just a second, let me finish with it. What?
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say that as my job description, I have a couple clients, one of them's a personal assistant, one of them's a caregiver.
Yeah.
Pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, one of them is more kind of like work in their law office, but it's at their home, they're retired. You know, it's just, it's records, it's financial, but it's still in the scope of caregiving.
And so you see it as your employee, they're your employee. Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you, that's all.
I mean, they're coming into your home, right? That's a domestic
Yeah,
care in the home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if they come to your home to help you with stuff,
okay.
then yeah.
Sometimes I think when you go through an agency, there's a distinction
Right.
between home health aide
Mm-hmm,
and certified nurse's aide.
yeah,
Like a certified nurse's aide can do
meds.
bladder and bowel care,
Right.
no,
Yeah.
not medication. That's an RN.
Can't they
or an
administer?
LVN. And a home health aide
Yeah.
is like, can maybe fix you breakfast
Yeah,
and clean the house.
the
But that's
important thing
usually
is
through
house.
agencies.
House.
The important thing is house. And agency people are employees, they're not self-employed.
Right.
Yeah. So, some of you are probably accustomed to receiving a W-2 anyway from if you're working for a DSHS client, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you get a W-2 that says it's issued by a DSHS, but it's on behalf of a particular client that you're serving. Yeah, so I mean, there you have it, the state knows.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So, my husband qualifies through the Alzheimer's Association we haven't done this yet, but I got the paperwork for it, for a caregiver to come into the home, and the Alzheimer's Association pays half
Half of what though?
that caregiver's fee, which my half would end up being $20-some. Do I have to do something?
You mean an hour?
Correct.
Okay, so you're anticipating it's gonna be $20 an hour and they're going to pay half.
No, it's $40-some.
Right,
per
right,
hour.
and
Yeah.
so they're gonna pay 20 and you're gonna pay 20. Do we know? Has anybody had this happening? Families don't pay when it's DSHS, right? That's entirely funded?
Correct.
I don't know the answer to your question, but that's interesting. Can you, send me, a link to
Sure.
to
I'll
the
send you-
program
Mhm.
that's providing this care? Is it through the VA or something?
It's through the Alzheimer's Association.
Is it I'm interested, my brother-in-law has just been diagnosed. Is it an income-based program?
They're also giving us 12 hours a month of housekeeping.
Is it an income-based thing?
Yes.
Okay, so do you mind sharing what that income level is?
Oh, I don't know.
I mean,
I just had to fill out a piece of paper and they said,
okay,
this is what you get.
do you have to have a lower than higher income?
I don't know what the bars are.
Okay, I'll take a look at it, that's interesting. My guess is, I don't know, they'll send some kind of paperwork to you, but I would be interested in knowing what they're going to send. And if you're providing the other 20, then yes, you're the employer with the other 20. But they might assist you with that, see? They might, if you're lucky, they might do the payrolling and give you a chargeback, which would be the very easiest possible thing.
Like as a copay or something?
Yeah, that they would collect it back from you in some way. I don't know how that would happen, but that's a really interesting question. If you'll email one of them, they'll email me.
I will definitely. So the other part of that is, now that we're going to be having people come into our home for the first time, what is our responsibility in terms of risk? Like, what if the person hurts themselves? What if they're helping with something and da-da-da?
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
What do you, how do you be a responsible employee?
Okay, Tori, is this something you know the answer to?
Typically, your homeowner's liability
Right.
insurance covers people who come into your home.
Right.
and, but I would have to I can't say definitively, because sometimes you have to get a rider for people for, like if you, like say you're giving piano lessons in your home.
Yeah.
And you're inviting the public in.
Mhm.
Right.
But that's a little bit different. I think your homeowners would cover.
Would
So I
cover
should
any
contact
liability,
them.
Yeah.
like a fall or.
No.
Never contact your insurance company right away.
Well, Tori, that's, yeah,
Well,
You-
because then they're on notice,
yeah,
and then they're gonna tell you all kinds of crazy things potentially.
yeah.
Let me,
That's
if you
true.
don't mind,
No, I don't mind.
I would love to look at that question, because that applies to everybody who brings a caregiver into their home.
Right.
If there's any additional protection that could be beneficial to you.
Mhm.
Typically, homeowners insurance covers anyone that you invite into your home.
You know, I think that might be another reason to be an employee. I'm thinking of the self-employed guy who's up on the roof blowing off the leaves. He's bonded and insured. I'm assuming if you're hiring people who are bonded and insured, your homeowner's insurance isn't gonna cover him. He's got his own risk, you know, he's gonna be paying for, labor and industries and stuff like that. But I think if you have somebody in your home who's, I mean, if you gotta have an electrician in your home fixing something, again, he's self-employed, but I think an employee would be covered on your homeowner's insurance. But what I'm hearing Tori says is find out the answer before you tell them. But the thing is, and Tori, you'll probably agree with this as well, you don't wanna be in a situation where something happens and the insurance company says, you didn't tell us you had
Right.
somebody in the home. So you need to know the answer and then do the right thing.
Which is, we're talking about a contract, I would want that in the contract too. Who's responsible for your own personal,
Well, I don't,
You're responsible.
you're responsible either way.
as an employee,
Yeah,
Absent
Oh.
acts of negligence.
Yeah.
and
oh,
bad
the
behavior.
employee is responsible.
yeah,
You're responsible to keep a safe working environment.
right.
And absent some negligence on their part, you're
Like-
responsible for what happens.
Yeah.
But here's what I'd like to do. Be sure and put your contact if you would like the answer to this question, please be sure and put your contact information on that yellow sheet that was passed around, because when I find that out, I will email the group. And we're not gonna construe this as legal advice. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna contact my own insurance company, because I don't have a horse in the race, and find out some of the parameters and what is recommended. Because I think more often than here's the rule, it's what is your risk tolerance? And here's what's recommended and what is likely to happen. And here are some examples that I can think of. I don't mean to be taking up your time, Deborah. If you are caring for someone and you're doing heavy lifting of the person, or types of activities that could put you in a position where you could hurt yourself. And that's one of the reasons that you wanna be an employee, because then you're covered by L&I.
Right.
Labor and industry, things like that, very important. And those are the situations, as a person who is bringing someone into your home, that is one of the reasons that you want them to be employees, because then they are covered, and then we're not even talking about homeowners, because things that could happen to them are going to happen in their course and scope of employment. And then they would be eligible for workers' compensation, not workers' comp, what is it, labor and industry.
Yeah, it's workers' comp.
Workers' compensation if they were to be injured doing work at your home. But I'll look into that, and I will send an email out to everybody and say, here's what I've discovered.
Thank you.
So I just looked at the chat and everything is about, they'd like to see the handouts in PDF and with hyperlinks, and
Yep.
you've said you'll do that. If anybody who's participating remotely has a question, you can put it in chat and I will see it. Okay.
Well, I have a follow-up on that then. So as the employer, are there additional insurances that you need to carry?
Well, that's what Tori's gonna look into. We're thinking that regular homeowners insurance would cover that.
No, but beyond that, like to trigger if an employee to have an L&I claim, don't you have to, as the employer, be involved in some way of your half of the bargain for the L&I stuff? Or just,
Yeah,
is it a default?
Tori, I'm not certain that workers' comp covers a household employee. I was just gonna Google it and find out.
Okay.
I do know that they pay into unemployment, but I don't think a household employee that they're,
But aside, well, I guess
covered by,
a little further, like just aside from just the social security that, that you as an employer pay, is there any other, like insurance or, I'm thinking like medical coverage, anything that's required by law that you're required to provide an employee, such as benefits of any sort?
well, so I think you're thinking of several benefits that Washington State provides, like paid family medical leave and things like that. But there's a certain, you have to have 10 employees and a certain, you know,
Okay.
so it's not gonna cover, it's not gonna be required of an individual, employer of a household employee.
Right.
So hypothetically, could it, I mean, if you really needed 24/7 care and you had a huge collection of people, would you then get in that position?
Well,
Huge collection.
I hope you don't get in that, in that situation. Yeah, as far as, my understanding is that you're not paying into workers' comp and you're not paying into PFML. And there's a, yeah, I think those are.
I would look into that, because I have a feeling like with care.com, that
Do you
my
have PF?
deductions are pretty equal to, the CDWA, which is state of Washington.
Yeah.
But I can't swear on that right now.
Can we get that
that's-
on the list, Story,
Definitely
to
something
look
to
into? Thank you. Yeah. And are you going through an agency or are you employee?
I have one private pay or two private, and then one is CDWA, which is the Consumer Direct. They work with the Medicaid clients.
And that's probably, is that the one that's holding out PFML?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
folks.
because they have more than 10 employees. Yeah.
63,000.
Yeah, exactly. So to answer your question, if you're not part of something like, you know, if you're doing something like she's doing, they will be holding out PFML.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that the assumption is that your homeowner's insurance would cover any
Yes.
unforeseen, like, you know, he fell off the roof after
Yeah.
asking to take the
Yeah.
leaves off.
Well, don't send your caregiver up to do that. Okay.
No, but any injury, like I threw out my back and now I feel like you wouldn't have, like you feel that if the person is lifting someone out of a bathtub and then they maybe, yes, are now all of a sudden feeling that they're disabled for life or something, that you would just have an L&I claim, it would go through, you wouldn't have to.
It would go
like,
through
you would
your
need a
homeowners.
Safeguard, like if you're saying L&I would likely be triggered at that point, but that's.
No,
where
I'm saying I don't think you're paying into L&I, so I don't think you're gonna get out of L&I. So
Yeah.
we'll get an answer posted to that.
Yeah, got it. It's a
Yeah,
little
I hear what you're saying now, because it'd be an employee who's injured at the work site, on the job. Interesting. And it's not, I'm thinking of, there's a medical part to your auto insurance, but not to your homeowner's part of the insurance, so that's a good question.
Well, I have an umbrella.
That's different.
Just,
Yeah, does anybody care what she's talking, an umbrella?
umbrella policy.
Yeah, well, umbrella is just, if an injury goes beyond the limits of your policy, then it covers it, but the thing is, I think from what you just brought up as a scenario, your insurance would deny it, so your umbrella it wouldn't matter that there's an umbrella, they'd say it's a non-covered, claim. We will get to that, that's very interesting. Yes,
What about, can a family member be an employee? Not a spouse.
not a spouse and not a child, but a family member certainly. But you'd have to treat them in every way but you can't, well, and when they say can't, you mean like you'd be trying to build their quarters for Social Security or something?
You need the care, you have a family member who needs the employment.
That's a good question.
That's another good question.
Yeah, very good question.
Yeah. There are special rules that relate to Social Security for a spouse or for a child, and it depends on how old the child is and so forth, so I'll get to that. Are you making?
I'm taking down.
Good. These are really interesting questions. It's really helpful to be with people who are experiencing it and know
Yeah.
what has come up. Yeah.
The
Yes.
gentleman, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to mention that another benefit for caregivers to report is because of the benefit of the Washington State paid medical leave or family medical leave.
Well, that's what we were just discussing. We don't know if a household employee, if there's a requirement for PFML. Are you,
I'm just saying from what I've learned about the program,
oh, the,
you don't even have to be working when you file,
Mhm.
but you have to have worked a certain number of verified hours
yeah,
in the last so many quarters.
yeah, there's a
So
number of hours in the last,
I would think they would qualify if they're reporting.
if they're reporting income. Yeah, we're gonna do some research on PFML and see if that's something that, the question is, as the employer, does the employer need to hold it out of the employee's wages? So the employer would be responsible for holding, the employee would see that that's money they're not getting. It's not a huge amount, by the way.
Right.
And you have a question online?
Yes, what is the scenario if you only need temporary intermittent care for a family member? This seems so overwhelming to file paperwork as an employer of a caregiver rather than using an agency.
Well, you know, if you use an agency, it costs more, is that correct? Because you're paying for the agencies, whatever, but it'll save you the paperwork, basically, so there's a trade-off there. Again, in terms of, as an employer, if it's gotta be less than 1,000 in a 3-month period for it to not be reportable as an employer.
And then Elaine's asking, are we hearing a spouse cannot be a paid household employee?
We're going to look into that. What I'm saying, so my part in this is the tax aspect, and what I know is you don't hold out Social Security if it's your spouse or a minor child. What I don't know is, I would think, let's see. See, it would be weird, because you're paying your spouse to be your caregiver, and then you're writing off the caregiving as a medical expense, but the spouse is reporting the income that you just paid her. So it's kind of a mess.
You mean I don't get paid?
Yeah.
And then a gentleman.
I don't think that's.
I don't think it's legal in Washington, at least.
To do what, to?
Yeah.
To
Not
do,
with coach, not with any of the
Yeah, I mean,
Medicaid.
they ask you those questions when
yeah,
when you're
I don't
submitting
think you can,
hours.
right,
Is this person living with you?
yeah,
It
yeah.
could be another family member, but
Not a child or a spouse.
Spouse is what you
Yeah,
said.
okay. What is okay, we did that one.
So Bob,
L&I covers household employees. PIMCO, for example, has a $5,000 medical insurance maximum for no fault injury. Okay, well, if they're saying L&I covers, this is Bob Hawkins somebody who?
Bob, do you wanna, illuminate for us a little more about the L&I coverage that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think L&I definitely has a category for caregivers, and it costs just over $1 an hour, and employers should have it.
So even employers of only one or two people?
I think so.
Okay, well, that's what we're gonna look into that.
I think you should. I think it's really important.
Thank you, Bob, I appreciate that.
And there's a question, was there a recording made of tonight's, is that correct?
Yes, and
Yeah.
there is a recording made.
Okay, and you'll post that.
And I will post that on the website. And I'm also going to post all of the handouts, the 2 handouts that have all the links and everything. So those will be available on the website. And I will put the website address into the chat so everybody has it conveniently and they can write that down if they don't have it already.
Okay, somebody's come up with a workaround here. A relative can pay the spouse to be the household employee. Okay, let's not go there.
That's all that I saw on there.
Okay, any other questions? All right, well, I want to thank everybody remotely and here in person for listening to something that you're probably like, oh no, I'd rather go to the dentist, please. I'll go to the dentist, you go to the caregiving workshop. But again, I just want to remind you that you are worthy of respect, and you should present yourself and insist on being treated as a professional. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb.